They built 32 luxury cabins on his private island, sold them, and celebrated their success. He didn't argue, didn't fight, he just watched in silence. But when the time came, he took every single cabin back, legally. For decades, the small island in the center of Lake Braxton stood untouched, a peaceful green sanctuary surrounded by clear blue waters. It belonged to Thomas Vance, a retired engineer who had inherited the land from his grandfather. The deed was old but firm, a clear line of ownership that had passed through generations. To Thomas, the island was sacred, a symbol of solitude and legacy. Across the lake, a newly formed homeowners association had begun transforming the once quiet shores into a bustling resort-style neighborhood. The HOA's president, a woman named Karen Ellison, dreamed of turning the entire lake into a vacation hub. She called it the Braxton Lake Community Project. It was ambitious: 32 luxury cabins, a clubhouse, and a private dock for residents. But there was one small issue: the island wasn't part of their property. At first, Thomas noticed surveyors with orange flags along his shoreline. Then came construction barges, and finally, the whine of chainsaws cutting through trees. He watched from his boat as the HOA's workers began clearing land, his land. They claimed it was community property, and no one questioned them. The cabins rose quickly, elegant wooden structures with private decks and lake views. The HOA advertised them as exclusive island retreats, available for members and short-term rentals. Thomas didn't protest. He didn't call the sheriff, and he didn't post signs. Instead, he quietly gathered paperwork, tax records, land surveys, historical deeds, everything that proved beyond doubt the island's ownership. While the HOA collected millions from cabin sales, Thomas waited, silent and patient, like a fisherman watching the lines heighten. Months turned into a year. The cabins were all finished now, 32 in total. Residents boasted about their private island getaway. The HOA celebrated its success with press releases and social media posts. No one knew that every photo, every map, every advertisement was quietly building Thomas's case. One evening, Thomas stood on the lakeshore, watching the lights flicker across the water. The island was alive with laughter, music, and the hum of generators. It wasn't anger that filled him, it was calculation. He knew that soon the silence would end, and the law would speak louder than any HOA decree. Thomas's patience had ripened into precision. For over a year, he had documented every illegal nail driven into the soil of his island. He had records of boat traffic, cabin sales, HOA announcements, and even property tax filings that mistakenly listed the island as community land. Each misstep by the HOA became another piece of ammunition for what was coming. One morning, as the sun rose over Lake Braxton, Thomas walked into the county records office carrying a thick folder. Inside were the original land deeds signed in 1947, notarized transfer papers from his grandfather, and modern surveys proving the island's clear boundaries. The clerk, stunned by the meticulous detail, confirmed what Thomas already knew: the HOA had built everything on land they did not own. While the HOA continued collecting rental income and membership fees, Thomas quietly filed a property reclamation lawsuit. It wasn't just a small claims case, it was a full-scale legal challenge that named every cabin, every structure, and every financial transaction connected to the island. Within days, the county issued a freeze on all island property activity. The HOA board was blindsided. Their legal department scrambled to respond, unaware that the damage had already been done. At first, they tried to argue ownership through community development rights, but Thomas's attorney dismantled that claim instantly. Every legal precedent sided with him: clear, unbroken title over 3 generations. When the judge ordered an immediate inspection of the island, Thomas accompanied the officials by boat. As they stepped ashore, the officials recorded the parcel number embedded on every cabin lease and matched it to the deed in Thomas's name. The truth was undeniable. Word spread quickly. Residents who had purchased island cabins began to panic. Some demanded refunds, others blamed the HOA for deceit. Karen Ellison, the once proud HOA president, held emergency meetings, trying to salvage the project's reputation. But the more they fought, the deeper the evidence went against them. In the following weeks, the HOA's arrogance collapsed under legal weight. Court filings revealed they had sold the cabins under false property claims, a violation that bordered on fraud. The HOA's lawyers proposed settlements, but Thomas refused them all. He didn't want compensation, he wanted control. As the trial neared, Thomas remained silent in the public eye. To the community, he was a mystery, the quiet man who had let them build their dreams atop his land. But in court, he was about to show that silence had been his greatest weapon. The storm was coming for the HOA, and Thomas was steering it. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, homeowners, and curious locals filled every seat as the case of Vance versus Braxton Lake HOA began. What had once been a proud neighborhood association now stood under a microscope, its leadership trembling under scrutiny. The HOA's legal team opened with confident smiles, claiming the island had been abandoned land. But as Thomas's attorney laid out the evidence, their confidence drained like water through sand. Every map, every transaction, every photograph came back to one fact: the HOA had no legal right to build on the island. The property deeds presented by Thomas were airtight, signed, dated, and verified through county archives. The surveyor who had originally approved the HOA's expansion admitted under oath that he'd been instructed to ignore the small island's claim because it slowed development. The courtroom murmured as his statement echoed, proof of deliberate negligence. Financial auditors revealed more. The HOA had collected over $6 million in cabin sales and rentals, funneling money into community development funds. None of it was authorized. Each cabin represented not only a property violation, but a separate count of illegal enrichment. The judge's tone grew heavier with every revelation. Karen Ellison sat stone-faced, her carefully crafted reputation unraveling in real time. Her board members, once loyal, began distancing themselves. One by one, they resigned from their positions, leaving her to face the mounting pressure alone. Outside, cameras captured the chaos. Angry homeowners demanding refunds, construction companies suing for unpaid contracts, and investors pulling out of the project entirely. Through it all, Thomas remained composed. He didn't gloat or seek sympathy. He simply listened as his attorney explained how the HOA's actions had devalued surrounding properties, disrupted wildlife, and destroyed historic trees his grandfather once planted. The case wasn't just about ownership anymore. It had become a symbol of unchecked greed and arrogance. When the verdict finally came, the courtroom fell silent. The judge ruled in favor of Thomas Vance on every count. The HOA was ordered to vacate the island immediately, pay restitution for damages, and transfer all constructed properties back to the rightful owner, Thomas himself. The ruling also demanded an investigation into the HOA's financial mismanagement, effectively dismantling the association from within. The HOA's empire had crumbled overnight. News outlets covered the story nationwide, dubbing it the Island Scandal of Lake Braxton. Thomas's patience had turned into poetic justice, and the once loud voices of the HOA were now drowned by silence. Yet, even in victory, Thomas wasn't done. He had one final move left, a quiet twist that would seal the legacy of his island forever. After the court ruling, Lake Braxton shores grew quiet again. The once busy construction docks stood empty, the boats of contractors and tourists gone. On the island, 32 cabins waited, abandoned, still furnished, as if frozen in time. Thomas had regained everything without lifting a single hammer, without raising his voice. What had been stolen from him was now returned tenfold. Weeks passed as legal teams handled the transfers. Keys, documents, and titles all bore his name once more. Owner, Thomas Vance. Each cabin was officially his property, free and clear. Yet he didn't move in, nor did he sell them. Instead, he visited each cabin one by one, walking through the wooden hallways, feeling the weight of what had happened. The silence of the island was no longer emptiness, it was justice restored. He began restoring the island's natural beauty. The first thing he ordered was the removal of the HOA's banners, signs, and docks. Trees were replanted where they had been cut down, the soil was cleaned, the pathways cleared. Local wildlife slowly returned, ducks nesting by the shoreline, deer wandering near the tree line. It was as if the island itself was breathing again, free from greed and intrusion. Meanwhile, the HOA dissolved completely. Karen Ellison resigned in disgrace, facing lawsuits from angry homeowners. The luxurious neighborhood she once ruled had lost its shine. Homes sat unsold, and property values dropped. The same community that had laughed at the quiet man on the hill now whispered his name with awe and caution. Thomas didn't grant interviews or public statements. When reporters came asking, they found only a "no trespassing" sign and the sound of waves lapping at the island's edge. But quietly, he had one final plan, a gesture not of revenge, but of legacy. He partnered with a local conservation trust and donated the entire island under one condition. It would remain protected forever, open only for environmental study and preservation. The cabins would serve as research lodges, and the land would never again be sold or developed. In doing so, Thomas turned the HOA's stolen dream into something far greater, a sanctuary that would outlive them all. Years later, people still told the story of the silent man who waited, who let greed destroy itself. The lake remained peaceful, the cabins standing as quiet reminders that justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply watches and waits. And on still evenings, when the sun sank behind the island, the golden light reflected off the lake just as it had in his grandfather's time, calm, untouched, and finally home again.